So it's starting to look like Bernie Sanders is not doing too well in the 2020 Democratic primaries. He had a significant loss during Super Tuesday and an even more disappointing Super Tuesday 2, in which he lost states he should have absolutely dominated in. States like Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Michigan. The M's. Now, it is worth pointing out that the campaign is not over, that there are still many delegates to win, and there are many pathways towards success. Bernie and Biden are scheduled to have a one-on-one debate in which Biden is expected to embarrass himself. Not that Biden embarrassing himself has had any impact whatsoever on the primary elections thus far, but who knows, we'll see. And I do expect Bernie to do very well in Florida and Arizona, and if he does in fact win both of those states, that will change the narrative quite a bit. And there have been many delegates that Bernie has won that have not yet been assigned to him for whatever reason the DNC can concoct. For example, California has only just recently been declared a victory for Sanders, despite the fact that everyone has known California was a victory for Sanders since the election itself. However, at this point, I do not believe that Bernie Sanders will end up being the Democratic nominee for the 2020 presidential election. It's possible, but very unlikely. I voted for him, but I'm not betting on him. It is more likely that Joe Biden will win the Democratic nomination and then lose to Trump in the presidential election. The situation is tragic, but that is the situation we will likely find ourselves in. I'm saying likely and probably a lot because who knows? I sure as hell don't. So I'll just draw a card. 5 of Pentacles. You tell me what that means. It is far too early to do a post-mortem analysis of the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign because, as I've said, it is still going on and anything could happen. But I do think we are rapidly approaching a point, if we have not reached that point already, where the American progressive movement now needs to separate itself from the Sanders campaign. The notion of not me, us needs to start becoming a reality. The entire Sanders campaign was built on a notion that as president, Sanders would be an organizer-in-chief, and that he would be able to pass many of his major legislative reforms thanks to grassroots movements, protests, activists, and maybe even strikes. And all of those things could still happen without Bernie Sanders as president. The problem is that without Bernie Sanders as president, those reforms would take longer, and if they are passed, they would pass in compromised and disfigured forms. When protests force the establishment to make reforms, the reforms the establishment makes are reforms that would still benefit the establishment. Medicare for all would become Medicare for more. Tuition-free colleges would become tuition-assisted colleges. And maybe some immigrants would be released from some cages, but more immigrants would be arrested and put in cages to replace them. And sure, some of these things would definitely be a help, not as helpful as the real thing, but helpful nonetheless. Either way, we still have major problems that are not going to be solved, particularly when it comes to concerns about the climate crisis. Without a Sanders presidency, there's going to be no major changes to our economy that would put a dent in climate change. There might be reforms that sound nice, but nothing of any real significance. The loss of the Sanders presidency marks the last opportunity for any substantial change to occur with or within the United States government. The next opportunity is in 2024, which is way too late. I do not want to sit here and condemn electoralism. I think to do so would be short-sighted, silly, and stubborn. There is that quote that if voting did anything, they would make it illegal. But we've seen that the powers that be try very hard to suppress voting and make it as illegal as they possibly can get away with, which, by that logic, means that voting does something. The problem is, it does not do enough, and it does not do enough right now. The American progressive movement is growing and is powerful, but its ability to express that power is hampered by its attachment to the Democratic Party and its focus on electing Bernie Sanders. Therefore, the defeat of Bernie Sanders does present some bright sides. The defeat of Bernie Sanders means that the American Progressive Movement can focus on other things. And without Bernie Sanders, the American Progressive Movement can potentially detach itself from the Democratic Party. As far as I can see, there are three possibilities that emerge. One, the American Progressive Movement could split from the Democratic Party to form an American Labor Party. Two, the Progressive Movement could organize to undermine capitalism through the establishment of dual power structures, and it could assist oppressed peoples through direct actions. And of course, possibility three, both. An American Labor Party would be really, really cool, especially if they realized that there would be no chance of ever winning the presidency, and if they were to focus on winning in small local city elections, state assembly elections, and occasionally congressional elections if they think they could actually win. A lot of good could come from holding power through mayoral positions, city councils, county seats, state assemblies, and federal legislatures. There'd be a lot of concessions you could get out of that from the capitalist state. This, however, would take a lot of time and effort between building infrastructure, building credibility, and building just general support. My completely bullshit based on zero evidence guess is that it would take a decade at the least before any serious power could be amassed, and we do not have time for that. That is, if it survives that long at all. Many leftist parties have disintegrated or split apart for various reasons, and there'd be no real reason why this one would be any different from those. Furthermore, there's no telling if this party would have any more success than the Greens or Libertarian Party in American politics, where they technically exist, but they might as well not. Meanwhile, immigrants are still in cages, and the climate is going to kill us all. I do not suggest this possibility lightly. The United States system makes third parties almost impossible. I had previously thought that with Sanders, our revolution, and people like AOC, that the Democratic Party could be transformed and moved towards the left, but after recent events, I no longer think that's going to happen. The DNC has proven time and time again that it would rather lose than change, leaving the establishment of a new American Labor Party as the only option to express power within the state. The first-past-the-post voting system and a culture that is terrified of splitting the vote would be a almost insurmountable hurdle. But then again, many candidates these days run unopposed. Maybe we'd be surprised at how successful we could be in opposing them. Now, as far as option 2 goes, the establishment of dual power structures and direct action to help those in need, I've never organized anything in my life, so I'm not really the person to look to. Anything I suggest will probably come across as naive, hollow, or just ignorant. I do not know you, and I do not know anything about the conditions you are in or the community of which you are a part. In the original draft, I had a list of things that could be done, but again, I'm just not the person to look to for that kind of content. There are, of course, general everyday things like, is your community food secure? Is there a way to make it food secure? Try and make it food secure. Having food security would undermine capitalism a great deal, and of course, unionize your workplace. Bring industries to their knees. You can block roads and block railways. The First Nations within Canada have done that just recently. You can do that too. But ultimately, what you need to do and what your community needs to do is going to be very personal, and I don't feel comfortable suggesting anything beyond the most general of platitudes. But whatever dual power or direct action entails, I think it would be a lot easier if an American Labor Party existed, bringing us to option 3, both. The establishment of an American Labor Party across the entire nation could end up providing support and legal cover for those who take part in riskier direct actions. The organization of dual power structures would inevitably end up helping communities and make them more susceptible and interested in supporting leftist policies. So therefore, the non-electoral and electoral sides of the movement could end up having a symbiotic relationship in which they build power for each other. Anyway, that's just the way I see it. I could be down on myself for not having read a whole lot of leftist theory or not having participated in a lot of leftist praxis, but also, fuck that. If I keep waiting to be the perfect leftist, then I'm going to be waiting forever. And if we keep waiting to get started on any work whatsoever, we are going to be waiting forever. Waiting on Bernie Sanders or another politician to come along isn't doing it. Despairing whenever Sanders or another leftist politician loses isn't doing it. What it is revolution, or at least progress towards one. Right now, from where I'm sitting, the presidency of Bernie Sanders does not look like it is going to happen. But that is no reason to give up. It is a reason to change strategy. Keep fighting, keep organizing, make some friends and allies. There are dark times ahead, but we know what's coming. We can prepare for it. I unfortunately haven't watched a lot of other LeftTube/BreadTube lately, so I don't have anything new to recommend. But if you're not tired of my bullshit yet, you can always like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit the bell icon. And since you're still here, let's figure out what the Five of Pentacles means. According to thetarotguide.com, in a general context, the Five of Pentacles is not a great card to get as it represents hardship, rejection, or a negative change in circumstances. You may be feeling like the world is against you and nothing is going your way when it appears. It can signify bad luck, struggles, or adversity. Homelessness, unemployment, alienation, and poverty are all represented by this minor arcana. And it can signify illness, divorce, breakups, or scandals causing turmoil in your life. Fuck. Well, there you have it. There is help out there for you. It may be in the form of moral support from friends or family, financial assistance from social welfare, or even the kindness of strangers, but whatever it is, take it. Nothing lasts forever, and this hardship too shall pass.